Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and a very warm welcome to another session of Ask Dr. Saleem. In this session, you are very welcome to bring any questions that you have related to God or Islam or anything that fancies your mind about religion. You may ask your question in English or Urdu, your language of preference. However, the answers will be given in English just so that we can reach a wider array of audience. And so with that, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or send me the question in the chat and we'll get to that. So we'll start off with our first question. And the question says, मौलाना वहीदुद्दीन साहिब की तफसीर सूरत बकरा में उन्हें 6 शराइत मेंशन किए हैं जिनको करने से जो है आपको हिदायत पा सकते हैं। ये शराइत सूरह बकरा में या कुरान में ऐसे एग्जैक्टली मेंशन नहीं किए गए हैं, तो उनको ये कहाँ से 6 शराइत मिले हैं, और अगर आप मेंशन कर सके कि उन्हें कुरान से कहीं से लाए हैं या कहीं और से लाए हैं, तो प्लीज इसको वाضح कर लें।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dekhen, only Maulana Sahab could have answered this question, because I mean, if he has raised those 6 conditions or requisites for guidance, I'm not sure, I haven't read them. So it's something that he or maybe someone who is well versed with his thoughts should answer. It's beyond me to answer this question, unless of course it is related to something which is directly from the text of the Quran. So I cannot answer on behalf of someone.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Our next question comes from MP Navid Irfan. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. जी आवाज आ रही है उस्ताद आपको?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
जी मेरा सवाल ये है कि जो उस्ताद से जो खाने पीने की चीजें में जो चीजें हलाल हैं, तो उसकी अल्लत के ताल्लुक से ये आया कि जिसमें दरिंदगी होती है वो चीजें हराम हैं। तो इसमें जो शार्क मछली है वो भी बड़ा मतलब दरिंदगी से शिकार करती है। तो शार्क के बारे में नॉर्मली तो ये लोगों की वो है कि इसे खा सकते हैं, तो ये कहीं इस इल्लत से टकरा तो नहीं रही है बात?
So if you go by the reasoning that all edibles which cause, which are the result of an animal pouncing on its prey and cutting open it either through its claws or through its teeth, it would be forbidden. So this is about land animals, and it's equally applicable to sea animals also. So by the same token, sharks will also be forbidden to eat, because they eat their way in which they cut open their prey, they pounce on their prey, they use their teeth and their sharp teeth to bite their prey. And so therefore it's very similar to which any land animal would do in this regard, and so therefore they would be prohibited. All sharks would be prohibited for this reason.
Jazakallah khair.
You, Adil Qureshi, please go ahead and you may ask both of your questions.
Thank you, Mariam. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So, sir, the questions are about this situation that actually happened with one of the people that I know of. I'll try to describe it as accurately as possible. It's about a situation where the husband has divorced his wife once. So they had an argument over some very silly matter. And the husband, in anger, wasn't thinking straight, and he simply said to his wife that I divorce you once, and in future, if I ever ask you to do this thing again for me, then consider that as another divorce as well. So obviously, after some time, he realized that he made a big mistake. I cannot see you, Dr. Sahib, anymore. Can you still hear me?
I think he has lost his connection. So
okay.
Yeah,
so I thought I should save I should save my breath.
I'll let you know as soon as he joins in again. He'll show up. Until then, for everyone who's watching this, not on Zoom, but on a different platform, if you'd like to join the Zoom session, you can register at www.ghamidi.org/Ask Dr Saleem. And once you register there, you'll get the access to the WhatsApp group that has the link to join this session. And from there, you can ask your questions. So Dr. Saleem is having some connection issues with his internet, but inshallah, he's going to be able to join in soon. Let's wait for a bit.
But I joined, but I joined through Zoom. I'm connected through Zoom.
Yeah, you're in the right place. The link in the WhatsApp group is for the Zoom session.
Okay.
So you can ask whatever questions you have. It's just that we don't take questions from Facebook for this session. And Dr. Saleem is back. Okay.
Do you want me to?
Dr. Saleem? Yes, please go ahead. You can start now.
Hi, sir. Am I audible now? Do you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, I'm able to.
Okay, you are still breaking up a bit. But I'll probably just go on, still ask my question, hoping that you can hear me clearly. So this is a question that has been asked by somebody I know. This is a situation that happened with them. So what happened was, husband was, in a moment of heat and an argument over something very trivial, very stupid. He was angry with his wife, and he simply told her that I divorced you once, and in future, if I ever ask you to do this thing for me again, consider that a divorce too as well. So after some time, he realized that he made a huge mistake. So they did became intimate during that three cycle. Before that 3 cycle period was over, and they became intimate. And after that, after a few months passed, the husband did, casually did ask the wife to do this thing for her, which he sort of had almost forgotten about. But then they've realized that he had made this condition. So now they're worried that this conditional thing that he said once, that if I ever ask you to do this thing again for me, consider that a divorce. Has this conditional divorce happened or not? And secondly, if it has not happened, is there any kafara that the husband needs to pay? I assume one divorce has happened already, but is there any kafara that he needs to pay?
I think Dr. Saleem is stuck again. There seems to be internet issues happening in Pakistan. Okay.
I think not specifically, because I'm also linked in. I'm also connecting from Pakistan.
Oh.
It might be something with Dr. Saab internet, I think.
I'm also connected from Karachi.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, it might be on his side only then. Well, once he joins, maybe. Wait. For anyone who's confused on how to raise your hand, if you're on the phone and you click on more options, there should be a raise hand option. And if you're on your laptop, there is a reactions button. And if you click on the little reactions button, you'll have the option to raise hand there. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah, thanks everyone for your patience. Saleem is back. Welcome back, Dr. Saleem. Is my audio clear to you?
Yes, now very clear. So we just
Okay.
restarted.
Okay, sweet. Adil Qureshi, please go ahead.
Sure, sir. Sir, I hope I'm also audible. You can hear me clearly now.
Yes, very clearly now.
Okay. So I'll just try to repeat the question as briefly as possible. So a very trivial matter. So this is an incident that happened with somebody I know. So over a very trivial matter, in a moment of anger, the husband said to her wife, "I divorced you once, and if I ever ask you to do this thing again for me," to which she had said no, consider that a divorce as well. Now he realized that he made a mistake. They became intimate shortly after. So before the 3 cycle period was supposed to pass, and then after a few months, the husband did ask her to do this favor for her again. It was a very trivial matter, like bringing groceries or something. It was a very trivial issue. But now he is concerned that this conditional statement that he had made during that period when he was very angry, has that caused the second divorce to happen or not? And secondly, is there any kafara that he needs to pay for that?
I think in all such situations, I cannot give an opinion unless I can hear the person directly, because you see, there are a lot of circumstantial things which one needs to ask. It's not as simple as that. So if he would like to know the opinion, so you can pass on my number to him and to his wife. I'd like to speak to both of them, and then I can give an opinion.
That's fine, sir. I'll do that. I'll give you a number to both of them, and they can try to set up a time to reach out to you.
Right.
My second question, it's a more general question, but asked by the same person, is basically about the confusion that they had about hijab. And it's a very common question, but I'm not able to answer this correctly most of the time. So again, my understanding that I've shared with them is that as per the teachings of Islam, it's not mandatory for a woman to cover her hair, because it's one of those things, ma zahara minha, which means that your hands, your face, your hair, your feet, these are the things that are usually considered as open. So it's not mandatory for you to make sure that they're covered. You don't have to wear the burqa. You don't have to always cover your head. And it's okay for a lady to do that. You will not be held accountable in front of Allah if you don't do that. But there is this thing about the zina, where it says that, however, if you have put some zina on those, if you have put anything on those items, then I think their question was, do I then need to cover it? For instance, in case of hair, if I have done some highlights or anything on my hair, in case of my face, if I'm wearing makeup or if I put on some jewelry, do I then need to cover my face as well as my hair in front of a na-mahram, and I can probably still keep it open in front of the mahram?
So as far as doing this makeup is concerned, all those limbs which are generally kept open, even if you put on jewelry or any embellishment on them, you don't need to cover them. And this includes your face, your hand, and your feet. So on all other limbs, including your hair, if you are embellishing your head in any manner, then you need to cover your head or hair. However, if the head or the hair has not been made up, has not been embellished, then you don't need to cover the hair. So as far as your face is concerned, your hand and feet are concerned, they are to be kept open all the time, even if they are made up. Even if they have been decorated or embellished in any way. But the head is something in which if you've embellished your head in any way, then it has to be covered. Otherwise, if you've not embellished your head, then it's not mandatory to cover it, although it's recommended.
Right. And so what's the dalil for this point? Why is hair different from the rest of the body part?
Because something which always remains open is generally your hand and your feet and your face. These are the things which are customary, to leave them open. Otherwise, all other limbs are generally covered, including your head. If you look at the fact that your own head is also, you need some directive to have these covered. When it is said that la yubdina zinata hunna illa ma zahara minha, it means that you have to hide the zina You have to cover the zina, except which is worn on those limbs which are generally kept bare. I mean, there has to be some directive to have them covered. I mean, unless there is some external reason, you will not cover your face. Unless there is something happens, you will not cover your hands or your feet. But this is not the case with your hair or your head. So that is a different organ. I mean, you can cover it. You can wear anything which relates to covering it, but you will not do so with your face. So as you would have seen that the words are ma zahara minha, it actually means illa zahir minha, which means what is automatically kept bare. I mean, unless there is some compulsive reason, you don't cover that thing. So the three limbs that are not covered as a result are your face, your hand, and your feet.
Right, sir. And so just lastly, just adding to that, so this thing about covering your hair is only for the na-mahram. In case of your father, your husband, your brother, you can still leave it with them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shalal. Dr. Shalal, one has always heard that this life is full of trials, azmaish, challenges. And if you face it with sabr, you come closer to Allah. A point I'm trying to understand is that if you are suffering from illness or poverty or any struggles, then if Allah puts azmaish on you, how do you become closer to Allah? You would somehow you would try to protest, but that's feeling you become closer to Allah, you become a better person. This I've heard many times, but I've not been able to follow it.
I understand. You see, this is a probable outcome. So there are two outcomes when a person passes through trials and tribulations. One of the outcomes, which is a case which does not occur generally, is that a person becomes angry, he or she starts complaining to God, or acts in a very frenzied way. But something which the majority would do is that when they pass through these trials, they try to pray to God, come closer to Him, that God, please make us, if these are trials that we are passing through, please make it easy for us to pass through these trials. You try to connect to Him more because you need that patience, and that patience can only come by connecting to God. So as the Quran says, "Ma sabruka illa billah," you'll not acquire patience and perseverance unless you are closer to God. So if you have to combat these trials in a positive way, for that you need the force that comes from God. So this is what the Quran means, or this is what the statement means when it is said that when a person passes through trials, he or she becomes closer to God, because in that case, you draw on your strength, which is based on that God connection. But this is, as I said, a major outcome. A minor outcome, of course, is that there are some people who, instead of coming closer to God or taking this to be an opportunity to come closer to God, they start protesting, or they start even, they go as far as even abusing God. So that is also an outcome. But as I said, this is an opportunity which presents itself to people who are God-fearing, that instead of protesting and complaining, they draw more strength from God.
So if you're in pain, but then you also become a better person by praying more, or
you see, when you start connecting with God, you start that linkage with God, and you do it often, it has that effect on you. You become more serene, you become more patient, you become even more accommodating to other people. You accept what has happened, because you see, in trials and tribulations, things which we don't expect, they start to happen, and they start to shatter us from inside. So when you think that there is a grand scheme of God according to which the things are going on in this world, and it's not always that things are going to go on the way I expect. So in that way, you become a more of an accepting personality to God's plan. So it's that overall effect in which you adjust and think that, well, whatever is happening in a way that I am being put through a trial, yes, but then the outcome of that would be that at times God is going to save me from a better situation. So many a time we also feel, when we come out of those trials, that had things gone our way, we would have been in a lot of bother. And today, if I find myself to be in a better position, in hindsight, when I look back, I always thank God that this didn't happen the way I would have liked it to happen. So you see, a lot of things are it's not just a simple statement. It's a statement which tells us that because of the fact that this world is based on trials, it's the basic philosophy. So whenever you are made to pass through these trials, God is going to test your mettle. And that is that it's always easy to thank God. It's always easy to connect to God when you are passing through ease and good circumstances. But when you're passing through these trying circumstances, the real mettle of a person is tested, that you even then thank God and accept his plan. So there's a whole lot of depth to this issue, I would say.
And then you think of the next life, that this is temporary, and the next life is where God
obviously that is something which gives you assurance. I mean, these are the things which give you assurance that all the trials that come our way, they are not meant to stay, they are temporary, they are transient, and they are meant to test our mettle. And if we are able to survive these trials, if we are able to go through these trials in a way that we are successful, then there is a everlasting life of bliss and joy waiting for us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. We have a question in the chat that asks, is participating in lotteries considered haram in Islam? If so, what is the underlying philosophy that deems it so?
So you see, lottery is basically very close to gambling. And that is why it is, unbecoming, or it's advised that you do not take part in any such thing which assumes the shape of lottery. There are things that we do. There are a lot of games that we play, and money is involved in that, like rifle tickets, like tombola, like many other things, in which basically the spirit of gambling is there. And in some cases, it is gambling per se as well. So that is why we have been told to stay away from them. So one other thing that also we should keep in mind is that all undertakings from which we have been stopped to engage in are ones which are against the purification of our soul. So the purpose of religion is to purify our soul, to make us clean individuals and pure individuals from inside. So activities which hamper this purification, they are proscribed. And gambling is one thing which really hampers that purification. It makes us a person who would like to earn in a way that instead of doing hard work, instead of entering into a particular style of life, you just start to throw away money, and you enter into games of chance. So you see, in its purest form, we find games of chance being played by money. But then other things, they can be analogously linked to these games of chance, the way they are done so today. So it's not that they are gambling per se, but the spirit of gambling, nevertheless, is found in them.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Zoha, please go ahead. Zoha, I see that you've unmuted yourself, but I can't hear your audio. Okay, still can't hear audio. Why don't you go ahead and try to test out your speaker and your audio, and take a look at your mic. Until then, we'll take another chat question and then come back to you. So this chat question is in 4 different questions, but they're kind of short, so I'll take them all together. And they're all regarding God. So the question is, do we know from Quran or anywhere else if God has a body? And what is Nur?
So you see, one of the things which the Quran has told us, Laysa kamislihi shay, which means that there's nothing that can be comparable to him. You cannot compare him with anything that you might imagine. He is beyond our imagination. So therefore, we don't know what form he exists in. So all that we know about God is through his attributes and through his practices. As far as his being is concerned, the Quran tells us that it is beyond our comprehension. We don't know what form he is in, whether he's someone that we can imagine the way we have an imagination of living beings. He's not amongst those. And anything that comes to our mind vis-a-vis a living being is something that we should abstain from and indulging, because God says that you cannot have an idea of the nature of my existence. You can know me through my attributes and through my practices.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Does he sit on his throne or anything else like one of his creatures?
So once again, you see, these are the ways in which the language has to be understood, as the Quran says, "Summa stawa ala al-arsh," which means that then he took to his throne, then he sat on his throne. This just means that it's not just that he created mankind and then just went away, as some philosophers think that he was just the first cause and then he left the governance of this universe to other people or to deities or to his subordinates or to other intercessors. This verse is actually meant to specify that not only did God create mankind and this universe, he also is governing them. So when it is said he sat on his throne, it's just a metaphor to tell us that he is governing the universe as well. So it's basically it's like an answer being given to those people who think that God was just the first cause, and once he created mankind and the earth, he just went aloof and he just transferred the reins of power to other people. So basically it is said that he not only created, but he is still governing whatever he created.
So similarly, when it comes to language, if somebody says that there is nothing on or under God, then that doesn't include his throne too, because that's just sort of...
Yeah, of course, because throne is not to be taken literally. Throne is a metaphor for governance. The way we find the word throne being used in our own language, when we use the word the chair or the throne, in the way that it has been used in this expression, it always refers to authority and to power and to the fact that the person who is being ascribed to it is the person who is in the ruling position.
And then lastly, where is he? Is he everywhere in the world or somewhere in the sky?
Again, as I said, this is something we just have no comprehension of. As far as his being is concerned, and this concept of space and time is concerned, at one instance, the Quran has told us that huwa zahir wal batin, huwa al-awwal wal akhir, which means that both in time and space, he existed when nothing existed, and he will continue to exist. And he was there in time, before which there was no time, and he is going to be there after which there's going to be no time. So it's just a manner in expressing that he is beyond the confines of time and space. And wherever he is, or whatever the form of his existence, because of the fact that he is beyond time and space, because humans can only imagine things which are within the confines of time and space. So this is a way of the Quran telling us that he is beyond the confines of time and space. His physical form or his physical being is beyond our comprehension, and we should more concentrate on his attributes and his practices, because this is how we relate to him. So you see, the real thing is that how should we relate to God? It could be through your visual connection, which of course is not there, and it could be through that connection in which he deals with you. So the Quran asks us to deal with God not in a way that we can see or observe him, because we cannot. The way we can connect to him is through his attributes, is through his practices, because his attributes and his practices are very similar to what we also do in our own small sphere.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Zoha, please go ahead.
Okay, now you can hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab. I have recently go through an ayah, and there Allah mentioned that he sent his prophet to teach about the book and the wisdom. So what I want to ask is that what's the context of wisdom in terms of Quran, and what Allah wants us to perceive wisdom as? Because in our regular language, we perceive wisdom as sensibility and intelligence, or like akalman we say in Urdu. But I believe that it's not the same in case of Quran. Maybe it's have more scholarly meaning. And the thing is, what would you like to add on wisdom in Quran?
So you see, as far as Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah are concerned, if you trace all the verses which mention the fact that the Almighty gave us the Quran, the book, and the wisdom, you'll see that it is actually referring to the contents of religion. And the contents of religion are two. Basically, one is the law, which is the Sharia, and the other is the moral directives and articles of faith. So as far as the kitab is concerned, it relates to the Sharia or the law. And the word al-kitab in Arabic also means law. So the part of religion which relates to law and Sharia is what is covered by the word al-kitab. The word al-hikmah actually refers to the directives of religion which relate to faith and morality. So the word al-hikmah is not used in its conventional connotation of wisdom, as we see. Yes, it is mentioned in some verses as wisdom, but when it comes like this in the form of al-hikmah with an alif lam, and it is coupled with the word al-kitab, it always refers to the contents of religion. And these contents, as I said, are two: al-kitab and al-hikmah. Al-kitab is the Sharia or the law part, and al-hikmah, the question that you've asked. So the word al-hikmah actually refers to the directives of morality and to faith, which is of course a part of religion. So al-hikmah refers to the articles of faith and to the precepts of morality. It's not wisdom in the conventional sense. It's al-hikmah, not hikmah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Baran Nashur, please go ahead. Baran?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hello.
I had a question about the
Mhm.
concept of zina, because in our current day and age, it's like not that easy to get married anymore, to perform the nikah. And when, like, if you are in the process of getting married to somebody, like you already went to her father, her wali, and he has given her hand to you, but you are now in the process of getting actually married, like finding a house, stuff and like that. Like, are you allowed to touch her, hug her, stuff like that, because you're technically not married yet, but you did receive her hand in marriage? Like, when does it become zina actually?
I mean, zina is a specific, it's a specific term which relates to sexual intercourse. And obviously, when you touch someone or you hug someone, you're not committing zina. But nevertheless, this is inappropriate to be done before nikah has been done. So nikah is that formalization of marriage. Even if you've asked for the hand of someone and the father of that girl has agreed, but you're not formally married, you're not formally wedded to her in the form of that commitment that you make when you make that solemn oath that, yes, I'm taking this woman as my wife. Unless that happens, it's not appropriate to even touch or hug her. Yes, you can talk to her, you can exchange ideas and views so that you can assess how you're going to live as husband and wife. But as far as zina is concerned, it has absolutely no bearing. I mean, even if you touch her, which is inappropriate. So all that we could say is this isn't something which is not appropriate. But zina would constitute, it would only be said to have been done once you have become sexually intimate with someone. So this cannot be classified as zina in any way. All that it can be said as an inappropriate behavior. And for that, as I said, unless you are properly wedded in the legal sense, it's not appropriate to touch or hug someone who's going to be your future wife. But if you do so, then even then it cannot be classified as zina. That is an entirely different thing. It relates to a specific circumstance.
Okay, so but you are allowed to see each other, like talk to each other, like
you see, in order to take a decision, if you have to meet each other in order to make a decision whether you are comfortable to become spouses to one another. So as long as you are taking that decision making is something in which you can talk to her. Even after that decision making, it's okay to talk to her as long as you are within the norms of decency. But as I said, anything which is to be done with a wife can only be done once you are formally wedded. Before that, all that you can do is, have a decent chat on any issue or any meaningful exchange. And that is, anything beyond that would be, as I said, inappropriate.
Okay, so but because like nowadays it's like in the past it was very easy to get married to each other to perform the nikah, but nowadays It feels like also like with the families, it's like become more difficult. They say like 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, like it becomes very
Right. It does
difficult
become
to.
difficult. Yeah, it does. But as I said, I mean, it's difficult, and you have to take it as a challenge and must not succumb to this situation. So you have to maintain your dignity and your distance in these 2 or 3 years. And I mean, this is something which people face today in every country. And you have to think about ways and means to make it more comfortable for you. But certainly, I mean, unless you are formally wedded, anything which is which relates to any close contact with the opposite gender is not advisable.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Abdurrahman, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem.
Walaikum assalam.
Dr. Saleem, I have a question with regards to the Quranic verses. Recently, I came to know that each verse has a kind of energy vibration. I mean, I just read this theory. I'm not sure whether it is backed up with Quran or Sunnah. So I do read some verses of the Quran, kind of like just picking up some verses from one surah and then second surah in the morning and the evening. So does this type of reading have a positive or negative effects with regards to energy vibration?
You see, as far as this theory of energy vibration is concerned, I mean, the Quran, it's alien to the Quran or the purpose of the Quran. The Quran itself has specified on many occasions, on numerous occasions, that its purpose is to guide, its purpose is to provide direction. So if you read the Quran to obtain guidance, to acquire guidance, to find out what the truth is, that should be the purpose in reading the Quran. Yes, you can read the Quran from here and there. You can pick one verse in the morning, maybe just open the Quran, and from wherever it gets opened, you can read from there. You can do the same in the evening. But the purpose of your reading should not be that, not to acquire any energy vibration, because we don't even know if it exists. And even if it does, for example, let's assume that it does. That is not the basic purpose of the book of God. Its basic purpose is guidance and to give you that God connection. Yes, what I can say is that guidance and that God connection, if you get that when you read the Quran, it makes you a person who is vibrant in energy. It makes you a person who is fresh in his mind. So maybe it's like a consequence that some people might be referring to. But as I said, this is something which generally is not the case, because they refer it to something per se, that you just read the Quran not for what is meant, but just to obtain that vibrant and positive energy. So I would rephrase it that the purpose is to get guidance, to acquire that God connection. And if you have that guidance and have that God connection, it would surely make you a person who has that positive energy in himself or herself, or those positive vibes, not because like a mantra that you read and that makes you a person of positive character or nature, but because of the fact that if you understand that guidance and if you have that strong God connection, it gives you that internal energy to follow those words of God and become a better person.
So, I mean, if I read in such a way, as you said, that it is not backed up with any strong source. I mean, it's only for guidance. But even if I read in such a way, like picking up 2-3 verses from one surah and then joining it with another 2-3 another surahs, so it will not have any effect. It's just neutral, because it is not meant for that type of.
It's not meant for that. I mean, there should be a purpose. That why would you do that? I mean, why would you pick up 2 or 3 verses and then go on and pick up 2 or 3 verses? I mean, unless you are told that this, normally people don't do it. I mean, you would not do it perhaps unless you are told that, well, if you do this, this and this thing will happen. In a normal course of things, what do? We generally read the Quran from one place. Yes, of course, at times we just say, okay, let me go on to another part of the Quran. So it should be like a natural thing that comes to you, not because that you are driven that if you start reading from different places, then you will get something specific out of it. So it's like having that variation in the Quran, that you, at times when you read one part, you tend to have something in which you might be missing some variety, something more that you would need. So you skip some verses and you then go on to some other verses. And again, when I say you skip those verses and go on to other verses, what I mean is that you are not just reading the Quran in its Arabic text, but you are understanding it through a translation as well. So if this is the case, I mean, I don't see any harm. But as I said, it has to be for some reason and something that makes you think that, well, if I read the Quran from different parts, it's like having a variety or something in its diverse form before me, and so that I can have a taste of various portions of the Quran in understanding it. So this is one thing that does come to my mind. Otherwise, I mean, for the sake of what people tell us, that if you read the Quran from various places, they are going to give you some vibrant or positive energy. I think it's something which the Quran itself doesn't support.
Yeah, understood, Dr. Saleem. Yeah, thank you. But just a side note, I got that book from one of the Sunnah, I mean, kind of, it called as Manzil, and it has various sections picked from this Quran. So I understood your point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the remaining questions, because we only have another 20 minutes left, I'd like to request participants to keep them as concise as possible, just so that we can get through as many during this time. So we'll take a chat question and then take another participant and then another chat question. So the question asks, is there any revelation or wahi to prophet other than what's mentioned in the Quran? And if so, then if that's not the case, that means any historical reports or hadith mentioning any revelation not found in Quran should be rejected.
Well, if the questioner is referring to people who are not mentioned, or to prophets who are not mentioned in the Quran, and they are sent wahi, yes, the answer is yes, because the Quran itself has specified at one place that the Almighty says that I have not mentioned the anecdotes of all the prophets of God. And if you read the rest of the Quran, you'll come to realize why God has said this. Because you see, the Quran is addressed to the Arabs, people who lived in 7th century or 6th century Arabia. And they are narrated, the anecdotes or the tales of only those messengers and prophets with whom they had acquaintance, whom they knew well, had this historical connection.
I think Dr. Saleem might. Dr. Saleem? Can you hear me, Dr. Saleem? I think we've lost connection with him. Let's wait for a bit until he comes back again. We have noted that the question is specific to Prophet Muhammad. Let's wait once he comes back, we can make that clarification.
What time the lesson started?
So we start at 11 a.m. EST. That's let me find the other time zones. 8 p.m. Pakistan, 4 p.m. UK. So, and the session goes on for an hour.
And did Dr. deliver any lecture today?
No. Today was just Ask Dr. Saleem. So we take all the questions that we have and ask them. Yeah.
I was surprised at what's going on.
We're gonna have Ask Dr Saleem Islam Study Circle next week, inshallah, if I remember correctly. So that's when you're gonna be getting a lecture and then the Q&A. So if we don't go through all of the questions today, which I don't think we'll have the time for that, realistically speaking, keep your questions, and inshallah we'll take them during Islam Study Circle once the lecture part is over and we get into Q&A. Welcome back, Dr. Saleem. So the question that you were answering previously, that was only specific to Prophet Muhammad. The questioner was only asking about Prophet Muhammad.
So, I mean, I'm not sure then what was implied. I mean, if he says that wahi could come to other people except Prophet Muhammad, other than Prophet Muhammad, is that what he was asking?
He was asking if there's any possibility that the wahi could come to Prophet Muhammad without that being noted in the Quran. So was every
yes, that is possible. You see, that the thing is that the Almighty instructs his prophets, and not all the wahi which is sent by the Almighty is meant to be recorded in the Quran. So you see, every messenger and prophet has proximity and closeness and a connection of being taught by the Almighty. So I do imagine that, I mean, there are even instances from within the Quran which tell us that there was communication between God and Prophet Muhammad, which was not recorded in the Quran because they were purely meant for his instruction, meant for his training, meant for some other things that were meant to be communicated. So everything which God communicated to Prophet Muhammad was not meant to be part of the Quran. I mean, whatever was to be the Quran, it was specified explicitly by Gabriel that yes, this is the wahi which has to constitute the Quran. And there were other things which were of the nature of communication between God and Prophet Muhammad, but they never were part of the Quran.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Saleem. Suhail Zafar, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sir.
Walaikum assalam.
I have a question related to zakat. Actually, I recently found out that Ghamidi Sahib considers that if you are doing some kind of a job and you have a salary, you are supposed to pay 10% out of your salary every month. So please, first of all, correct me if my understanding is wrong, because actually I haven't been able to find much detail about it. And also, like, what's the basis or the argument behind this ruling?
Yes, your understanding is correct. And if you ask Marian, she'll give you a link in which I have given a small session or talk which says Ghamidi Saab's view of zakat, in which I've explained more details about this 10% and why that he has come to this conclusion. So if you just look up that lecture, it's basically about his views on zakat. But as far as your question is concerned, yes, your understanding is correct that you have to pay 10% of your salary as zakat on production whenever you receive it.
Okay, so like you have to pay it monthly, and then at the end of the year,
yes,
you're again supposed to pay
every time that you receive, you have to give 10%. But on the year end, whichever date you specify as your zakat date, whatever you have on that date is going to be zakatable by 2.5% of whatever you have. So these are two forms of zakats. One is on production and one is on saving. So production or income is something that you get whenever you get. It could be weekly, it could be monthly, it could be 6 monthly, whatever. So whatever the frequency of your salary is, you'll go to give that 10% every time that you receive it. And this is one form of zakat. And the other form is on your savings, which is to be given once a year. And whenever you have that zakat date specified, you are going to just calculate the amount that you have in cash and in bank and give 2.5% of that value.
Basically, my confusion is about that how salary is actually considered as a production, because I don't think he considered any other business or the income as a production.
So I think if you could just go through that lecture, because this is something detailed, and I have explained how he has come to this conclusion that salary should be treated as production. So I think Mariam would be kind enough to give you the link of that lecture, and you'll it's not very, I mean, it's a short lecture, and it's the purpose is to explain his view.
Right. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
I've posted the link in the chat, so take a look there. Before we move on, oh no, Mumtaz, please go ahead. Mumtaz, you're up next. Okay, if you're having trouble unmuting yourself, Mumtaz, you should see a prompt to unmute yourself on the screen. If that's not happening, then we'll come back to you in a bit. Muhammad Shaib, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem.
Walaikum assalam.
Actually, I'm looking for some reference from Quran about the demarcation between Hakukullah and Hakuk Ribad. It is a common problem in our society that people think that a house in Jannah has been allotted if they have done completed some tasbih or performed umrah or hajj. So my question is if someone has committed a sin against the life, assets, or respect of other person, I mean, where it is mentioned in the Quran that he would not be forgiven on Judgment Day unless that victim has forgiven him or their accounts or amal nama has been settled.
Right. So you'll find a lot of verses in the Quran which says, "Illa allazina tabu wa aslahu." Illazina tabu, you will not be forgiven. Your atonement will not be accepted unless you repent wa aslahu and make amends for what you did wrong. So that amendment can only be done once you set right the wrong. So the word, just look for the word tabu wa aslahu, type it in your Google browser in Arabic, and you'll get those verses.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mumtaz, please go ahead. Okay, seems that they're still having trouble. Nugair 20, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Abid Asghar from UK.
Salam.
Dr. My question is regarding there is some verses in the Quran which mention that God is addressing the Quraysh, and they are saying your distribution that you are associating daughters to me and sons to you. So I get the notion that God is like some sort of why, like, see, the God is saying like why you are associating daughters to me and the son to you. I don't understand what God wants to say about here.
So you see, God is trying to point out the foolishness of their suggestion, and on the one hand, they regard God to be an exalted being, a reverend being, a blessed being, a person or a being who they really honor and revere. And as far as they themselves are concerned, they would not like daughters. I mean, whenever a daughter would be given to them, they would, they would grumble and complain, and they would be very happy when a son would be blessed to them. So the irony is being pointed out here by the Almighty, and they are being told that, look, you don't even like daughters to be someone of a worthy possession for your own selves. And you ascribe, because you see, these idolaters would regard angels to be daughters of God. So they had this belief that they were daughters of God. So the sarcastic remark is that for your own self, you don't like daughters. And for God, who you respect and revere and put him on a pedestal, you ascribe daughters to him. What kind of a foolish ascription is this? So just a way to make them realize how foolish they are. That something which they don't like for their own selves, they are ascribing to God, whereas they realize and they give God that due respect that he is on a higher pedestal. So how can someone who is on a much higher pedestal be ascribed with something which they themselves don't like for their own selves? So just a way of making them realize how foolish they are.
Doctor, do you think that's a very difficult situation and difficult ayah to understand for the normal person?
I don't think so, because you see, this is just like pointing them out that something which you don't like for your own self, you are ascribing to God. You don't like daughters for your own self, but you say God has daughters, and this would have been acceptable if God was some inferior being but they themselves say that God is exalted, he's superior, he is high, and he's lofty. So someone who is lofty, they're ascribing something to him, which for their own selves, who are much inferior to God, don't like. This is just like a slant, like a sarcasm, just like a critique, telling them that, please look what you're doing such a foolish thing.
Okay, well, I was just thinking that like might be so like a discrimination of the man and woman. They are
No, it's
ascribing
certainly
to.
not. No. God has taken their notion. It's not that God is demeaning women or daughters in any way. That's not the case here. God has said that look what you are. Then look at what you are doing yourself. You don't like daughters and you're ascribing daughters to me. So that is not the case, that God in any way or in any form endorsing the fact that daughters are lesser than sons. So that should not be derived from this at all.
Okay, thank you.
Since we were on the topic of zakat, there's a question that asks, does the taxation of 34% be taken into account in USA during zakat calculation?
Yes, it would be. So because zakat is the only tax which can be imposed by a government on its citizens, Muslim citizens, of course, in this case. So if they are giving more than the zakat in their as tax liability, they can subtract their zakat from that tax liability. And if that tax liability is more than the zakat, then that zakat is understood to have been given. And even the balance that you have in your favor can be transferred to the next year, so that you can subtract that as well for future taxation.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. And we have time for just one more question. So this question asks, for the purpose of becoming a contributing individual, one involves in some sort of service or voluntary work. On the other hand, it helps to acquire contentment and a sense of selflessness. But sometimes it also happens to have a sense of regarding oneself and, sensing greatness in oneself. How come a person is going to control this in him or herself? We're having audio issues again. Dr. Saleem, you're cutting off. Let's wait for a bit.
Always to keep an eye on what we might be doing wrong. If we not just our own faults, our own shortcomings, and we continue to realize
Dr. Saab, if you stop your picture, audio might be better, to get better, inshallah.
I think he got completely disconnected from Zoom right now.
When he comes back, suggest to him if he can cut his picture out, that will make the audio better.
Let's see, he's, I guess, joining again. Okay, since we don't have much time left.
So, Mariam, I was just thinking, with your permission, that maybe we can go on for 5 or 7 minutes more, because we have lost during the.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Give 5 or 7 more minutes extra.
Absolutely.
In case the recording permits us.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but Dr. Saleem, your audio is still cutting off. Are you able to hear me clearly?
I can hear you clearly, but I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Dr. Saab, if you stop your picture, your audio will get better. Stop your picture.
Akram Bhatti Saab is suggesting that you stop your video.
Taken.
Dr. Saleem? Okay.
I guess it's because of the Wi-Fi. Maybe he's on a wireless network.
I think there is
I can hear Dr. Saleem, but not very clearly still. Dr. Saleem? Okay. All right. I think that the internet issues are going to persist. So keep your questions, please take notes of them, and we'll take them, inshallah, next week during Islam Study Circle, instead of going over time today, because it seems that the internet issue is going to persist. So inshallah, see you all next week or tomorrow for textual study of the Quran.